And welcome back. This is Up to Date on KCUR 89.3. I'm Steve Kraske. As the next legislative session gears up today, one of the big questions confronting the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry is what it'll take to get the state's economy back to full speed. The Chamber has released a three-point plan aimed at doing just that. And here to tell us about it is Dan Mehan. He's president of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dan, welcome back to the show. It's nice to have you again.
Steve, it's good to hear your voice. Happy New Year and best for 21.
Yeah, same to you, Dan. And as 2021 begins, what kind of shape is the Missouri economy in? Because obviously we're still in the midst of COVID. How do you see things right now?
Well, we are in the midst of COVID. We have begun a recovery, and actually Missouri's doing better than most states. The numbers tell that story. Our unemployment is only at 4.4%.
Right.
And that's much better than the national average. So we've got some good things to point to. When we had embarked in about 5 years ago on what we call Missouri 2030, which was a strategic plan for growth for the state.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time that we started that, Steve, we were 42nd in state GDP growth, 43rd in job creation, and 39th in per capita income growth. We were showing signs of improvement on those metrics, and then COVID hits. And the silver lining about COVID is it hit everything, every person around the world. So everybody hit the pause button, and the economy shut down. We looked at each other and said, Missouri 2030 is now turned into Missouri 2022. We've got to do things right now, as soon as we can, to make sure that people understand how to recover, how to reopen safely, and then start the recovery so that we can grow and set our economic growth trajectory on a higher level. We've got 3 areas of focus that we're coming to the Missouri General Assembly with. One is COVID liability protection. Many states around us, most of the states around us, have done something in this area to protect those small businesses and schools that reopen and follow the guidelines, try to do the right thing, and open safely and effectively, and not be victims of a frivolous lawsuit. Very important to do. As we've seen at the federal level, there's been a failure to do anything in that area. So the states that are doing that are clearly putting out a sign saying they're open for business, open for education, open for healthcare.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, before you dive into the other ones, I just wanted to ask you about tax burden, because that's one of the issues that you spend a lot of time looking at and worrying about. Missouri has long prided itself as something of a low tax state. Do you still look at it that way? Because I see that Kiplinger's magazine released its list of most and least tax-friendly states last year, and Missouri ranked 27th, while Kansas ranked 44th. How do you see it?
We are a low-tax state, low tax, low cost. In our research that we did when we had the Gallup organization do a poll of 1,000 CEOs across the state, they basically did a SWOT analysis on doing business in the state of Missouri, strengths and weaknesses and opportunities. And the tax burden was not the problem. Compliance issues and the fact that at the time the Department of Revenue was changing their regulations, changing their reporting, and all business really wants is, hey, tell me what the rules are, give me some certainty, give me, and we'll play along. But we are a low tax state. It's one of the things that as a state we should sell.
In your view, can the state afford to cut taxes further? Because I noticed that cutting taxes is not on your list of the top 3 initiatives that you guys want to see this year.
It's not, and we derive our agenda from our annual poll of CEOs and member input, and we're just frankly not hearing that there's a need for cutting taxes. We just are not hearing a complaint on that. So if anything, in the tax arena, we need to figure out how to deal with the Wayfair decision at the federal level. We are one of 2 states that have not addressed this.
Explain what that is to our listeners, Dan.
If you buy something online from Amazon, say, you don't necessarily have to pay a state sales tax on it. But if you go down Main Street and buy the same item from a retailer, you do have to pay sales tax. We don't think that is fair. It hurts our local businesses. It puts them at a competitive disadvantage. And like I said, 48 out of 50 states have dealt with this thing, and that would drive revenue into the state. And then the debate would rage over, well, if we're bringing revenue in, then we should cut taxes, or if we're bringing revenue in, should we spend it on transportation or education or Medicaid, whatever it might be. So, but at least address the situation. Our recommendation is address Wayfair and put it on pause for 2 to 3 years, see how the revenue comes in, and then make a cogent decision on how to apply it, whether it's a tax cut or funding other programs.
So as we sit here today, then, Dan, almost a full year into COVID, just a few months short of it now, what's your sense for how long it's going to take to get Missouri's economy back up to full speed? What's it going to take?
Probably at least a year. And two things on that. Again, our agenda is designed to propel that forward, and the COVID liability is mission critical. That's first and foremost. Secondly, if you look at the analysis of the numbers coming in on the revenue side for the state, with the tax day being pushed off into the summer instead of April, that has helped this current fiscal year in a big way for the state. The concern over appropriations, folks, is what happens in the state's fiscal year of 2023, when the federal money will be expended, and hopefully the tax schedules will be back to normal. And that's a concern looking long term. But the best way to fix your revenue problem is to grow your economy. And so that means jobs. It means bringing more people into the state of Missouri. Our population has been flatlining, and that's not good, because if whether you're in a pandemic or before COVID hit, our members and employers everywhere were saying, I've got the jobs, I just can't find the people, I can't find the talent. And we've got to do a better job of addressing that issue and focus on some career technical education and work-based learning that would apply in the real world out there.
Well, what's behind that flatlining of the population, Dan? What's your analysis of what's causing that? Because you're right, that becomes a very big concern before too long.
One thing I've noticed, and Steve, I'm from St. Louis, I think we don't do a good enough job as a state, and in St. Louis in particular, about talking about our successes and talking about what's right. I think Kansas City does a very good job at that compared to other areas. But we're not, we expect to be, unfortunately, in the middle. And unfortunately, when we started Missouri 2030, we were not in the middle. We were in the lower echelon. And 2030, our strategic plan. But right now, you can't accept being in the middle. And that's not what our organization is about. We should aspire to be a top 10 state. If you have the opportunities, if you do a good job in talking about an honest discussion of what we need to do and what is right, then you'll get those people to come here. We are a top 10 state in the technology sector availability of jobs. And who knew that, right? We only discovered that because we did a report on it in our strategic plan. And that's something that the state should market. You hear
I didn't
story
know
after
that. That's
story.
interesting to me. I had no idea.
Right. We're number 6 in women in technology. So, I mean, we've got a great story to tell. Kansas City absolutely has part of this with Cerner, with Honeywell, with some of these companies. And, when I have the Bear Corporation tell me, hey, we're a technology company, we happen to be involved in agriculture, that tells you all you need to know. I mean, I'm looking down at my iPhone that when I started this gig, when you were banging around the Capitol too, Steve, we didn't have those.
Yes.
So
don't you know?
It's changing quickly. I thought it was really cool that I had a pager. But I'll go home tonight and listen to my 8-track. But anyway.
But there is a sense, just from watching the state closely for so many years, you mentioned this idea of being a top 10 state, being ambitious. It seems to me that, I'm speaking very broadly here, Missouri has settled for a long time, being okay, being in the 40s and 45th and 48th ranking in so many different categories, and a sense of urgency to change that, to push the state in a different direction, give it a more ambitious kind of veneer. has been lacking. At least that's how I've seen it for a long time.
When you described it as settling, you're spot on. And
Mm-hmm.
when we discovered that we were 42nd, 43rd, and 39th in these key metrics, we we had a presentation to our board on that, and the people were looking around at each other saying, "Hey, I thought we were in the middle. Is this really that bad?" And I'm going, "Hey, the scoreboard doesn't lie." And when I'm going around trying to share the news about what we're doing, what we see as potential solutions, and trying to get the support to do that, I like telling people, hey, we're trying to get to top 10. If you don't want that, I'll leave.
Mm-hmm.
But if
Mm-hmm.
you want to be a part of the solution, this is what we have to aspire to. And think about this. Even with the election results yesterday in Georgia, do you expect anything productive to come out of D.C.? And it doesn't matter whether it's Biden, Trump,
Right.
D's or ours. D.C. has demonstrated an absolute ability to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the states that are accomplishing things and are moving forward are going to thrive. The states that don't won't. Too often I hear Indiana, Georgia, Tennessee are really doing very, very well. And why can't include Missouri? So
How confident are you that the leadership of the state right now, Dan, can take this state where you think it needs to be?
I am very bullish on the state of Missouri. We got this election behind us.
Mm-hmm.
We have a pro-business governor who I don't think I've ever heard him in a public appearance say anything or not say we need to do workforce development and infrastructure. And
Mm-hmm.
that is key to jobs, to giving the basis for the economy that we need. And so he gets it. He's now got 4 years left. He's not going to be running for office again. The House and Senate leadership, who we had on both majority and minority had on a webinar yesterday, they seem determined to move things ahead in the right way. The big question mark over the whole session really is what happens with COVID.
Right.
Does it end up shutting it down in 3 weeks, 7 weeks, whenever? What happens if a couple senators contract the infection, or House members or staff? That's what's going to be very interesting this year, and that's why we fully intend to be sprinting out of the gate when they start today, and trying to get some things done very, very early.
Dan Mehan is my guest. He's president of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. You're listening to Up to Date on KCUR 89.3. If you want to join our conversation, 816-235-2888, or you can tweet us at KCUR Up to Date. Well, Dan, let's turn to your three big priorities for this legislative session. You've mentioned one, which is stopping the threat of COVID-19 litigation. How big a concern is the lack of that protection for businesses and business owners across the state?
It's huge. And let me just tell you a story about how I know that. We sent a letter to the governor shortly after the regular session concluded in May, asking him to call a special session to deal with COVID liability protections. Then we took it to our membership and asked for people to sign on to it. And when we do something like that, if we get 20 or 30 co-signers, it's a huge success. We're now closing in on 800 co-signers. And it's some of the big companies that you'd recognize, but it's also a pizzeria, a skate park.
Sure.
It is universities, it's school systems, it's hospitals, it's healthcare providers. There's a very, very real fear out there of the litigation that's coming.
How are states around Missouri, surrounding Missouri, handling this idea, Dan?
Iowa was the most recent one to pass it and sign it into law. Even Illinois issued an executive order protecting healthcare workers. Arkansas has signed something into law. I think it's up to 7 of the 8 contiguous states have done something.
Are we seeing lawsuits getting filed in Missouri from, say, a customer to a skate park, to use your example? People saying, I went to the skate park 10 days ago, I contracted COVID, and I'm suing the skate park for doing that to me.
we keep track of litigation that's filed regarding COVID, and we work with a firm out of Washington D.C. that sends a weekly update. They were up to over 1,000 about a month ago nationwide.
Wow.
Missouri had their fair share. I don't know a specific case,
Right.
but then again, I heard yesterday that there were over 5,000 pieces of litigation filed, and that's from a Kansas City law firm. So I'm not exactly sure. I can just tell you that the fear is very real. We have a member company that shifted its production capabilities to make plastic face shields. They're an automotive company and make other products that go into various pieces of lighting and parts for the auto industry. They shifted to make face shields. They're very concerned that, let's say, people are using these face shields at St. Luke's, or pick a hospital or a medical provider in your area, and then it's deemed that no, the masks are what needs to happen. Well, what happens if I contracted COVID and I'm wearing this shield? Well, that aspiring trial attorney is going to go after the manufacturer, follow the deep pockets rule, and say you were negligent in producing this product and offering it as defense against COVID. So that is extremely real out there, and people are very concerned about it. And employers, a lot of times, people like to say negative things about business, but they're just trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to get their people back and give them a livelihood and go ahead with their routine. And they just want, again, that certainty. They're not looking for added protection. We just want to make sure we don't open a new line of vulnerability for them.
Let's turn to another concern, another priority at the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and that's Missouri's roads, Dan. This has been a concern now for a whole bunch of years. Any number of attempts have been made to ask voters for more funding for state highways. They failed at the polls. First, how serious of an issue do we have here?
Mission critical issue. We have the 7th longest highway system in the country, and we fund it at about 47th or 49th, depending on the day. I mentioned the iPhone, Steve, and the two of us dinosaurs didn't have them when we were working.
Right.
The last significant increase for funding for Missouri roads was 1993 under Governor John Ashcroft.
That's right.
So that's 2 generations really. And our gas tax, when you fill up at the pump, is 17 cents a gallon. The average around the Midwest is 27 cents a gallon. What we're trying to accomplish is increase the gas tax, because it's the best user fee you have out there. You want the people that are using the product to pay for it, right? So it's got to be, the easiest way to get there is a gas tax increase, 2 cents a year over 5 years, up to 27 cents. That gets mowed out where they need to be to take care of what we have. It's not an aggressive grab into the future, but there's also needs to be provisions that deal with electric cars. They don't fill up with gas, so they need to share the burden as well. But with that gas tax, we have been working with people in South Carolina that just got this done recently. And what they do, they offer South Carolina drivers a rebate as to how much South Carolina drivers pay on that 2 cent increase each year. And that seems to have gotten it. South Carolina and Missouri are very parallel in the political makeup, super majorities of Republicans, Republican governor. We think we can get that done, and with the rebate mechanism. And the other thing about South Carolina, 30% of the people that drive through South Carolina are from out of state. That number goes up to 40% or more in Missouri.
I was going to say, you still have to go back to voters, though, to ask for approval of a plan.
There's interesting you bring that up, because there's discussion, and we're trying to get a legal opinion on, do we need to do that, or is this included under Hancock? We want the legislature, first out of the gate, we want the legislature to try it. Okay, and if we get the legal opinion that I think we're going to get, we think it'll be okay to do. If that fails, or for political reasons, if they just don't want to vote on any sort of revenue for transportation, send it to the voters. We'll go back to a campaign for that, and hopefully be able to convince folks. I mean, there were a lot of votes for Proposition D 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We knew there wasn't really enough time to get the voters educated and comfortable enough to accept it. We had pulled that in January of 18, and that's exactly what we learned, was you need about a year to get them comfortable. We're going to be pulling it again in a couple of weeks, and that would be kind of an interesting thing to discuss on your show, maybe in a month or so.
Governor Parsons, is he for this idea of an increase in the gas tax?
He is for doing something.
Okay.
He's waiting for all the ideas to be proffered. We have visited with them on this. I think they're very positive to it, but I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Right. Dan Mehan's my guest. He's president of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We're previewing the Chamber's 2021 legislative agenda. Let's go to Scott from Independence. Scott, you're on with Dan Mehan. Good morning.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you taking my comments here. I have a question for Dan. I heard his emphasis on the Chamber putting forth COVID liability reform, and the facts and the numbers that he cited just aren't borne out. I'm a trial attorney. I'm looking at an ABA report that was just issued this week. The vast majority of COVID-19 cases are businesses suing their insurance companies for business losses. In fact, the few cases that have been filed in Missouri have been businesses suing their insurance companies. This wave of product liability and lawsuits that he's talking about just has not materialized in Missouri. The second largest number of cases have been people suing their employers over wages about whether or not their hours were cut back. So this, in my opinion, and according to the ABA, is a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Dan, do you want to respond to that?
It's simply not true. I can show you any number of websites of plaintiff firms that advertise to sue over COVID liability. So there's obviously a there there. But I can tell you, whether you take in what we learned yesterday, there's 5,000 pieces of litigation out there. Scott's right. Some of them are on insurance. Some of them are on some of these other areas.
Right.
But to get 800 small businesses signing on to a letter to please give them this certainty, this protection, that's real. And I can show you the list.
Let's go to your third priority just in the couple minutes we have left here, Dan, for the 2021 session. It's workforce development. You've mentioned it here. How would you describe the current condition of Missouri's workforce?
It's okay. I think we've made some strides in workforce in the last couple years in trying to make the connection between what I call supply and demand. The supply is the workforce. It's the people that are out there today. It's the kids coming up through the school systems, and the demand are the real opportunities that are out there. And those two sides were not really communicating, and we just really needed to convene that. Educators would tell us, well, we're not sure what employers want. Employers would say, I can't find the talent. Well, have you had the conversation? Mm-hmm. So we've been convening that. And I think that people are starting to get definitely the message that there are great opportunities out there that do not require a 4-year degree. We're not saying anything negative about a 4-year degree, but the fact is there are a lot of opportunities out there that for people to work with their hands.
But part of this is funding of education, though, isn't it, Dan? Because this General Assembly in recent years has been pretty tough on K through 12 and higher education funding. I teach at UMKC. How concerned are you about maintaining funding for K through 12 and higher ed?
We've always held that the foundation formula should be fully funded. So that you're right. We need to take care of education, and the higher ed has been in the crosshairs too often. So we get it. I think we're going to be okay this year, but again, 2023 is going to be a rough ride.
Dan, I'm going to have to end it there. That's Dan Mehan, president of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dan, nice to visit with you again. Thanks so much for your time today. It's much appreciated.
Thanks, Steve. Anytime.